Now I have quite a few different areas that I can actually grow these taller growing plants. So I've got to decide the best areas. So this area, part of it's going to be my corn, and then I've got a long strip that's going to be other things like courgettes and things like that. It is just clay heavy soil. No treatments, no extra food, no nothing. Eventually, we will turn this into a no dig area, but just not this year. So the area that I'm hoping to do some teepees in, all down here, but it's also got to be weeded. And I absolutely hate and struggle trying to weed clay soil. I have no interest in keeping my clay soil. I have noticed over the last year and a half of having this allotment, there's a there's a massive difference to weeding a no dig bed, which is relatively easy to pull up, to trying to weed clay, which is hard and compact and extremely heavy. For me, I would just rather go no dig. So this area may get a little bit wild if I can't actually keep up with the weeding for it. So I've been thinking, this particular area is an area where, yes, I do actually want to grow in it, because I want to grow some courgettes, some beans and other things in there, probably some other little bits and pieces. I'm actually going to put some black plastic down and actually put holes into the plastic and grow through it. Now, it's not ideal, but I know it can be done. I just don't like using so much plastic around, but at least it's something that can be reused year after year. Now, hopefully, by the end of this year, we may have enough compost to actually start doing no dig beds on this area. But at the moment, it's going to have to wait. By the time we've topped up the other side and created a couple of smaller beds and added some other beds down the other side, we probably won't have enough unless we have a really, really good year for compost. I've actually covered it in plastic before I start putting in my little trellises. This area is, I know for a fact, after seeing it last year and working the clay soil in these allotments last year, it's going to be a nightmare to weed, and I'm just not up for that. I want to enjoy my allotment and my growing without the added stress of weeds that really we just don't need. You know, as you can see, we've just at the moment put bricks down on it to stop it moving, and it is in several sections, but this will all have to be pinned down so it doesn't move. Now, the problem with this area, it's extremely stony. So trying to get the bamboo in deep enough is quite problematic. These will be for my runner beans. I'll grow multiple runner beans up these plants, and the same with the other trellis as well. I'll have a courgette in the middle and in between that one, and then I'll decide what I'm growing on the rest of the actual plastic itself. Now, when it comes to the trellis in the plastic, I'll actually make holes, but I'm not actually going to cut my plastic just yet because the beans are not going out for probably another month. My runner beans I've only just bought, so they should be here this week, which I'll start sewing up. Now, I will sew in modules because it's easier for me than direct sewing, simply because of the amount of losses that we actually get. Now, there's other ways that we're going to grow vertically on this plot too. We're actually going to grow along the pallet fence. Now, we have topped it with a bit of chicken wire, which will actually serve the purpose really well. I've ordered some purple peas. For the life of me, I can't remember off the top of my head what they are, but they're really pretty purple and blue flowers. So I'm actually going to make some piles of compost along here to actually grow my peas in, up and along. Now they may need a bit of support along the pallet, so I might put a little bit of fine netting or string or something for them to actually grip onto. But once they get to the chicken wire, it shouldn't actually be any issue. Now apparently they grow up to 150 centimetres, so around about 5 foot. So these will be actually perfect up along this fence line. So I've made a tomato A-frame. This is where some of my outdoor tomatoes will be growing up. I've added vertical and also the horizontal on there as well, just to give it a little bit more strength. This will also provide support for any tomato plants that are a little bit shorter. I'll add additional vertical poles when I know where my tomato plants are going. So what can you grow up your trellises or archways or up a fence? There's lots of options for vertical growing. Anything from your taller peas and beans to even squashes and pumpkins, if they're the trailing variety. Now I am actually going to build a small trellis for one of my pumpkin mix, which is an actual trailing variety, just to see if I can actually, how high I can actually get it up the trellis. And probably will have to support the fruits as they develop. But I'm going to give it a go later on in the year and actually see how far I go. Now I'm actually growing runner beans on these. I haven't grown runner beans in a few years, and it's one of the plants that just keeps on giving. So I'm actually going to have runner beans on these 2 trellises here, and then create some more upright growing spaces over the next month for different areas. So I can try different varieties of things to grow up. It not only creates a smaller space for your growing, it also creates some interest for your allotment as well, giving it a little bit of height here and there. I'm trying to make it a little bit more appealing this year. Now growing vertically doesn't mean straight up as well. It can also mean a support system. Now we use a support system using mesh for some of our squashes and pumpkins. Now we grow multiple different types a year, and we try and put it in different areas of the actual allotment. So for this particular top area of our plot, we do a mesh hoop. Now we grow cucumbers and squashes on either side in the beds, and we train them to go up and over. This also helps protect the squashes from rotting away on the ground, keeping them aerated as well, so there's less likely chance of mold and mildew. The downside to something like this is it does take up a little bit more room. There's a lot of wasted space in the middle. Now we could grow early season and put a bed in here, but it would actually make it really difficult to weed with the mesh, because the mesh is firmly attached, and it does need to be something strong, because it's amazing how heavy a squash plant with lots of produce on the vine, how heavy it actually is. So whatever you're creating, if you're growing squashes vertically, you need to make sure it's strong. On this one as well, we've actually gone for a recycled trampoline hoop and some chicken wire. And again, this will support our squashes to grow up and over. We have beds all the way around the outside. And at the moment, we've got some mange too on the one side, and we've actually planted some of our lettuces in the edges of the bed. And come the end of May, maybe up to mid-June, our squashes will go in and they'll grow really quite happily. This is mainly just manure, and last year we had a fantastic crop off just growing out manure. Now we do have another issue on the plot. And it's to do with our rhubarb. Now, at first when we saw all this damage, we thought it was pigeons. And then we started seeing a lot of broken stems, bent, rotting in the middle. And we thought maybe the pigeons are actually landing on the stems and snapping the stems or weakening the stems. But I'm starting to get a lot of discoloration on the leaves. And again, it's rotted in the middle, and I actually think it's too wet. But there's loads of different diseases and fungus issues that can happen, and with it being red like this, I do actually think I've got maybe a virus within the rhubarb itself. Now, these were sown from seed last year and planted into the ground, so the plants have never been anywhere else. But there's definitely an issue here with this rhubarb, and I don't think it's just the pigeons that's causing it. So I'm going to have a look and see if I can solve this. I do think they could do with more feed, but the stems are all just rotting off. And I've never had this issue before with rhubarb, and I've grown rhubarb for over 20 years. And I've got to try and solve this. You're in the way of the camera, girl. Yes, you are. You're in the way of the camera. This is beautiful. You're so beautiful. So if anybody's got any idea what it could be with the rhubarb, just let me know in the comments. I've read up on a few bits and pieces, but it's quite hard to get a definitive answer. This, I'm hoping, is an easy fix. But if not, it looks like I'll be starting again with my rhubarb next year. There's a lot of issues when you're trying to find advice online. There's a lot of mixed messages. You'll ask one question with a picture and you'll get 40 different opinions of what it is. And it's really hard for people to kind of sift through this information. That's why if you get any advice online, make sure that you're checking that answer with a reputable source, because sometimes I feel that people will give a response, especially inexperienced gardeners will give a response to something that they think they know what it is and it isn't, and you see it quite a lot in the forums.